Canadians recently took note as Belleville, a small Ontario town 2 hours east of Toronto, declared a state of emergency due to a high volume of drug overdoses on Tuesday, February 6th. 14 overdoses took place in the space of 2 hours. And less than 48 hours later, there had been a total of 23. Joining me now for first-hand insight into this crisis is Steve Vanderhoef, Director of Programs and Administration of Bridge Street United Church. Thank you for being with us today, Steve.
Thank you.
Steve, a lot of the overdoses that took place in Belleville on February 6th in those first 2 hours happened just outside your church and in the drop-in center that is your church building. Can you tell us a little bit more about what was transpiring that Tuesday afternoon?
Yeah, so the drug poisonings happened outside of the building. A number of people are in the space on the sidewalk outside of the church and back and forth where the program is operated in the building. So I think it was a fairly normal day, and then folks began succumbing to drug poisoning, and so emergency services were called and responded quite quickly.
And we're so thankful that, am I correct, that no one died as a result of these overdoses?
That's my understanding, yes, is that there were no fatalities in that 48-hour period.
Now, your church is so connected to the community that it serves, and you do life with those you are reaching out to and encouraging in their journeys as they struggle with different things like addiction or mental health or homelessness. How did the people of Bridge Street United respond to this crisis?
To this particular crisis, I think the church has a long history of working in the community to support individuals who are experiencing poverty. Housing and meal programs have been a long-standing part of not just what we do, but I think how Bridge Street Church sees itself and how it's seen in our community. So the drop-in itself started through that kind of long work in the community of getting to know what the concerns were and what the needs were. And in the pandemic, we had space available and there was a pressing need. And so connecting with various partners in the community, we're able to open the drop-in. So the history of this past week really is continuous with that longer history of who we are in the community and how the congregation sees itself. I think for how congregants responded in this particular crisis, there was shock, there was surprise at I think the dramatic nature of the drug poisonings last week. It's alarming when people you've got to know by name and whose stories you know are suddenly overcome with this kind of situation. And so there was shock. There is always, I think, a period of figuring out what's going on, and then we've had the opportunity this week to talk together a little bit and reaffirm a commitment to what we're doing. It's an important part, as I say, of who Bridge Street Church is, and to remain supportive and to be able to continue to participate in the community response to the crisis in this way.
Well, Steve, we're so thankful for the work that your church is doing and the work this ministry is doing. And we know that in recent weeks, actually, there have been a lot of cases throughout Canada of poison within various illicit drugs and a lot of different overdoses unfolding as a result. And I know going back to November in Belleville, there was about 90 overdoses in just 1 week. What do you think some of the needs that people in your community are facing in particular?
Well, I think that's right. And to the extent that Belleville is a microcosm of communities across Canada, I think we're seeing the intersecting challenges of homelessness, of people being unhoused for long periods of time, of trauma and addictions, and those are really connected. You know, I think it would be a mistake to think that everybody who's experiencing homelessness has some kind of mental health or substance use challenge as well. That's not the case. You know, we see quite a variety of people coming. But certainly there are a number who are struggling with substance use. And so Belleville too sees people who require supports without having adequate systems of support in place. And I think we're not unlike other small communities in that sense, that in this case, the dramatic nature of it was those emergency services in particular were overwhelmed, and it shone a new light on what has been a continuing crisis for some time.
Well, you know, Steve, one of the things I really appreciate about Bridge Street United Church and the outreach that you're doing there is the authenticity of the community life you're presenting to those you serve, and that there is so much dignity as you journey together with those who are struggling with various issues that have caused them to experience marginalization. When we look across Canada and we see what the nation is struggling with, we see people struggling with addiction and overdoses due to drug poisonings. How do you want to encourage churches and followers of Jesus to respond?
You know, I think Bridge Street Church, as I said, sees this as an identity. So we continue as a worshiping community. The congregation meets in the sanctuary every Sunday morning and in worship. And for the church, it's no less church throughout the week that we host a drop-in in our space. It's all part of who we are, and that central call of our faith to support people who are marginalized, and more than that, not just to support people, but to work for justice, to change those systems that keep people marginalized and that perpetuate these crises. And so that's really what we're doing. You know, the drop-in meets the immediate needs of people experiencing homelessness, and alongside of that, we're working with community partners and as advocates ourselves to bring the supports together and to work to change those systems. And I think that, you know, going through a long history of Christianity is part of who we are as people of faith.
That's indeed true, Steve. And, you know, as we chat here right now, we do have hundreds of thousands of viewers watching who are people and followers of Jesus. And we wanted to ask you, what are some of the ways they can be praying for our country as we care for those who are struggling in these ways?
I think the congregation itself has really appreciated knowing that other people are seeing. I mean, you do this work, and it's it's very visible in Belleville. We're on quite a public corner of the city. But the day-to-day, I think, and the care that's expressed is it's valued to know that people are keeping this community in its thoughts and prayers. I know the staff at the drop-in, first responders in our community have been overwhelmed in the last week. And as I say, this is an ongoing crisis without a particular end in sight. And that's a lot to bear. And I think the expressions of care from locally and far and wide in whatever ways that has been, you know, people praying for the community, expressing care in different ways, has great value to those who are doing the frontline work and who feel the toll and the burden of caring for people well in difficult and traumatic situations.
Well, Steve, we will continue to be praying for your community and for those around you that you are serving within the community. Steve, we're so thankful for the work you're doing to support vulnerable Canadians, to bring God's compassion and justice to earth here in our nation. Steve, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.